Welcome to Alimentary, the podcast series where you will learn about your amazing body, how it works, and of course why food is so important, and also pick up some simple recipe and lifestyle tips and tweaks to help you to influence your health in a positive way. In the last episode of Alimentary, I talked about the stress hormone, cortisol, and the need for all of us to be aware of how we can regulate it, because life and modern lifestyles are stressful. I also said that there are times when we need support, and that can mean professional help in order to deal with past or present trauma or other mental health challenges. So in this episode, we're going to delve a little deeper into this topic with a trained professional. When Breandan Larkin was 12 years of age, he suffered a bereavement in his family and his world was changed forever. Back then, grief wasn't discussed or dealt with openly. He spent 26 years in the hospitality sector, which is a very pressurised and stressful environment. And during that time, he felt as though the demands were driving him to breaking point. He went into a spiral of self-destruction until he was told that he was on his last chance to change his ways. He sought help, and he was lucky to find a wonderful, kind, caring therapist called Donal, who he felt saw him and not just his troubled behaviour. So he embraced therapy, even though 20 years ago there was a stigma attached to talking about mental health. After his therapy, he promised to pay it forward and give back to the community. He went back to college and retrained in counselling and psychotherapy, and later on in hypnotherapy. While the training was hard, he felt that it was the best decision he ever made. It enabled him to give back, and also reinforced the need for him to keep on top of his own self-care and mental health. Breandan says that if he hadn't been given that one last chance, which we all deserve, he's not sure where he would have ended up. He says that it's vital to deal with issues no matter how big or small, because they can resurface at a later stage. In this episode, Breandan explains the difference between the 3 therapies that he practices and how you should work with a therapist that you have a connection with. I'm your host, Lynn, and I know you'll enjoy my conversation with Breandan Larkin. So Breandan, it's great to be talking to you today, and thank you so much again for your time. I was wondering if we could maybe start off, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in psychotherapy.
Okay, so thanks for having me on. I actually became interested in this about 20 years ago. And how I got interested in it was I had a breakdown myself, and I got help and I got support. And at the time, it was actually very hard to get help and support. You can imagine 20 years ago how hard it was. But I found this man. He was a therapist over in the Westport area. And he was a man that basically, he was a priest, met a woman, fell in love, left the priesthood. And I thought to myself, this is the kind of man now that I want to talk to, because he was just a very wholesome person. He had a life story. And that appealed to me because what I was going through at the time, I didn't know whether I was coming or going, whatever. So I went and I met him, and it was the most informalist thing we ever did. We sat down, we had 2 cups of the worst coffee you'd ever had in your life. And he just sat in front of me and he smoked. Now, I don't know, was I getting therapy or was I giving therapy at the time? But,
Yeah.
it worked and I could just relate to it. And that's what therapy is for people. You have to be able to build up the rapport with the client or the therapist. So that's why I got interested in it. But I was far too young at the time to do anything about it. I was only in my very early 20s, and I thought, I haven't got enough life experience myself yet. So I said to myself, okay, when I get to a certain age, I'll practice it. But I did actually go and train 20 years ago in it, but I never practiced. I tried to take the easy way out, where I said, instead of me doing hours and hours of therapy, I'm going to learn it. So I went and I studied it, and I really enjoyed it, but I never did anything with it. I parked it for years, and then maybe 10 years ago, whatever, I started off then. I went into practice very slowly. I only started doing it part-time. It was just giving something back, really. It wasn't that I was doing it for money or anything. I was in hospitality for 26 years. Prior to that, I seen how working in a pressurized environment and stuff had affected people's mental health and how addiction could start very easy from the pressures of it and stuff. So I knew that my time in catering was getting very limited because I was just getting old and I wasn't able for the big long shifts. So then I gradually then just went into practice then part-time basis. And
Mm.
that's how I started off, just slowly developing it.
Mm.
I didn't want to go into it full time because it's very how to put it to you. I love what I do, but it was too much too soon, if you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
didn't think the business would take off as much as it did, and then it did, and we got busy, and people started coming. Then when they started coming, then you couldn't stop them coming. And
Yeah.
what I learned about it was that it was very important for me myself as a person, first of all, to work on my own self-care. Because if I wasn't wholesome enough, or if I wasn't in my own best frame of mind, I couldn't have been a good therapist. So I kept up that was part of our accreditation and our
Mm.
licensing, that we maintain our own personal development the whole
Mm.
time. So I'm still doing that, and I probably will be doing it until I retire, or maybe even longer. But I enjoy it. But it was just it was the end result that I seen out of it that really caught my attention. And then when I did that, then when I got into practice, then people are coming to me, and it's a problem we see now more and more, where people are saying to me, "Okay, how long is this process going to last?" And I don't know, like there's no defined answer to that. But I was researching things, I thinking, okay, what can we do here? Like, because the younger people aren't going to come. They don't want to come for 12 weeks. They don't want to come for 6 weeks. They might want to come for a session or two, but we have a recommended amount. We say to
Mm.
start off 6 weeks,
Mm.
see if you like it, see what changes happen, whatever. So the element of it was I was doing counselling first. So counselling is just kind of talk therapy where you come in and we're just going through the everyday life, what's going on, what's happening. Then I was interested in psychotherapy, where we were dealing more with the root problem. But as I said, what happened was people were looking for a quicker, shorter period of time. And I suppose, look, my own attention span at times wouldn't be that long. So
Mm.
I don't know what I want to commit to 6 weeks or 12 weeks. But I found this other fantastic therapy, right?
Mm.
Hypnotherapy. And I found out very quick that in hypnotherapy, what I was achieving in 12 weeks with the long term clients, I was able to do it in 6 weeks with the other clients. So there was my method of people saying, right, okay, can we get it quicker?
Yeah.
And the reason why it was quicker with hypnotherapy was that there's no objection really from the mind. Like if you come in for talk therapy or psychotherapy, someone's sitting there and they're looking at you, and they're thinking about what they're saying, or they're reading the room. There's too many distractions. But with hypnotherapy, they're coming in, and it's a nice, relaxing feeling. You're coming in, nice, comfortable chair, nice, soft music on the background. No disco, no party, nothing like that. Just soft music in it. A bit like what you'd have in maybe reflexology or aromatherapy, something like that.
Yeah.
And they close their eyes. And when the eyes are closed, the brain works in a different way. And we found that we were able to get through the stuff a lot quicker, and that suited people. But hypnotherapy has been around since the 1800s or something like that. And I just checked it there earlier. It was at its most popular back in 2019. Don't know why that is. Maybe that's just as far as the statistics go. But we would use it here for drug addiction, alcohol addiction, fears and phobias, uh, trauma, anything like that, really. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very, very good tool. And it's one that you just come in, you sit down, and you close your eyes.
Yeah.
You do 40%, I do 60%. It's a very high energy therapy where you couldn't do a lot of it in one day because it drain your own body, that kind of way. But
Yeah.
it's very good. How I So when I was researching for other therapies, I came across that one, but I tried it myself. I
Mm.
went to hypnotherapy. I wanted to give up coffee at the time. So I went in and I was, I don't know, maybe I was on Google and I was thinking, oh, this is a load of nonsense, whatever. So I didn't believe it, to be honest with you. Okay. So I went up to a fella, Dudley Hayden up in Athenry. I walked in with a coffee in one hand, a chocolate bar in the other hand,
Mhm.
as flippant and as blasé as that. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said, sit down in that chair. So I sat down and he put me into like a bit of a trance, a bit of a daydream. Then he did some confusion therapy. And then I was just sitting there and I don't know what he was saying. But anyway, I got up off the chair 2 minutes later didn't want a coffee, didn't want a chocolate. And I walked out of that place and I was able to go into shops, petrol stations, and I walked past all the stuff. I didn't
Mm.
want it. I didn't need it anymore. And all that he did was a simple mind reprogramming, where we call it a bit of aversion therapy. So what we do is if you come here and you want to give up like chocolates or biscuits or sweets and that kind of stuff, I do a bit of aversion therapy for you. So every time you think of a coffee or think of a biscuit, think of a sweet, it suddenly comes across as the most disgusting thing you ever had in your life and you don't want it. Do you know that
Yeah.
kind of way? So
Yeah.
it's a good tool for that. It's good for everything, really. It's just not as recognized in Ireland, but we use it for the heavy stuff, for the good stuff. And we've had some real fantastic results with it here through the
So
years.
do you mean with, say, alcohol and drug addiction? Is that what you
Mhm.
mean by the heavy stuff? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
I'd use it for that. A lot of therapists, you see, wouldn't go near that because there's work in it now. That wouldn't be a single session. Like the only single session I ever done here is sugar and quit smoking. Because smoking sometimes we've found out that it's a dirty old habit people have, really.
The
Okay.
habit, yeah.
It's just a habit. So anything that's a habit, you can break that very quick. An addiction is different, and an addiction sometimes is by association or by past event or some traumatic experience. So it's a byproduct of something else, basically.
Mm.
So that would be maybe anything from 6 weeks to 12 weeks, but it's a heavy load. But the only thing with it is, people walk out of here and they don't need any medication, they don't need to go on any replacements or anything like that. They just literally walk out of here a new person. And it is beautiful. But the only
Mm.
thing is with it is that the person needs to be on board with you as well. Do you know that kind of way? So
Yeah.
we do like a consultation basically, but it's a very deep consultation. And there's a process. The way I do hypnotherapy is quite different to most people. It goes over like a week, we'll say that there's a week of work in it before you even come here. And that's just to get you ready because you have to alert the state there's a change coming. Like you're not going to come in here off the street and just give up drink or drugs. It doesn't work like that. Um, you have to alert the state and let them know there's change coming. And then if they're willing and they come in here, it does work for them. And people have come back to me, they've thanked me, they've all these things. I don't want praise of anyone as
Mm.
long as it works for people. You know, kind of way. Like I had a woman years ago and she came to me, she wanted to stop eating chocolate, okay?
Yeah.
But as you know, when you stop eating chocolate or you stop doing something, sometimes a couple of things go with it. So, like if I was having chocolate, I might have a cup of tea or I might have a soft drink. There's a couple of things that can go with it. So she rang me up anyway and she effed and blinded down the phone at me. You changed my life. I can't eat this or eat that. And I said, that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
But it's my birthday and it's this and it's
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And I was like, I know, I says, but you opted. And I always say to people, be careful what you ask for because the subconscious and conscious mind is very powerful. That once you switch something off, sometimes it's hard to switch it back on. But
Yeah.
most people wouldn't come back and complain about it. Like,
Mm.
maybe two people did. One woman, she gave up sugar. So when she gave up sugar, she gave up tea, coffee, everything. And she was bored. And I just said to her, after a period of time, like what we learned over the years was we backfill. Okay. So if I take something out, I have to put something in. So if I'm going to stop you drinking tea and coffee, I'm going to encourage you to drink water or do something else, that kind of way.
Yes.
And it's the same with exercise. If somebody comes, they want to lose weight, like we used to do the virtual gastric banding. We're working on the virtual gastric sleeve at the moment. And we've actually researched this. We've been in contact with bariatric surgeons and stuff. So we're bringing that online maybe sometime next year. But it's just about, we learned very quick. If you take something out, you have to put something in. And people get very good results and they're happy about it. But
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
very good tool, very good tool.
yeah, because I mean, we do associate, obviously that lady mentioned birthday, birthday
Mm,
cake, and we associate that with being in our little community, so we
yeah,
we get together as a family to eat. Eating
yeah.
is such a central part to um, how we socialize. So you're absolutely right. We do need to have options and alternatives.
Mm.
There, I wonder just Going back to you mentioned, thank you for sharing that you came to psychotherapy, because of your own, breakdown, and often that's how I had a lot of food issues and stuff, and that's how I ended up going back to study nutrition, so often we can come into whatever therapy we study with empathy, for our clients, which is a great place to start.
Definitely.
But when it comes to, say, I think for a lot of people, they're maybe a bit unsure about the difference between, say, counseling and psychotherapy
Mhm.
and, what would suit them. So would you see, or how could you explain the difference between counseling and psychotherapy and, what each might,
Yeah.
what kind of issues each might suit best? Or is
You
it, is it
see,
down to whatever person? Maybe it's down to the person themselves, which
well,
therapy will suit them best.
yeah, it would kind of it would depend on what I call the underlying condition. Say
Mm,
what the presenting problem is not the problem. There's one under that. Okay,
right.
so would say if someone would say is after losing someone, would say they're going through grief, whatever. Counseling would suit them very well because they're just coming and they're just talking about the event that happened. Okay.
Yes.
So it's just more counseling, just more like talk therapy where you come in, you sit down, and we'll go through a few things and see can we make it better through like different mediums, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Psychotherapy then is used for deep root problems. So someone that might have had a traumatic experience, maybe someone that might have had a car crash, someone that might have had sexual assault or something like that. It's more getting in there with the shovel and digging deeper.
Yeah, maybe
And
the things we don't bring to the surface ourselves very
yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah, basically. And see, what some people is though, it's too raw for them to look for to dig deep, and
Yeah.
it puts them off, and they don't want to kind of press it if that makes sense to you. So
Yeah.
sometimes they're just kind of, oh, I don't want to deal with it, or I don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. That's why sometimes counseling would suit people a lot better. Psychotherapy is just it's a lot more deeper. The therapist does a lot more work in it where we explore a lot. We go back to childhood, we go back to school, we go back to every
Mm.
event in your life. Say if someone comes and the marriage might have broken down, you'd have to, we go back and see, well, where did it all start? That kind of way. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, something has started back a long time ago. Like I was dealing with a couple recently that their marriage unfortunately had ended, and we traced back to something that happened 15 years ago.
Wow.
And this was the cause of the breakup only there a couple of months ago, but it was never discussed or never looked at properly at the time. And I suppose it depends on people. We find with people as they get older, they're more open and they're more willing to kind of look at themselves in a different light. Like even
Mm.
myself included. Okay, like I said at the beginning, I still go to therapy, and when I go to therapy myself, I go for psychotherapy. When I go for therapy myself, like I admit things now that maybe 20 years ago I'd be like, ah no, I didn't do that, or no, that
Yeah.
wasn't the way. I'm a bit more, I'm not over the hill yet, but I'm a bit older, a bit wiser, and I've more life experience. I think people, when they get to the golden age of 40, they look back
Yeah.
and they're more able to deal with things. I think it's a good way to be, but definitely if they want to get down to the deep rooted problem, they'll go for psychotherapy. If they just want to
Yeah.
have a general chit chat,
Yes.
it's counselling. Now,
Counsel.
up until, well, it hasn't changed yet, but we'll say go back 20 years ago when you qualified in counselling, you also qualified in psychotherapy. Now they're changing it where you can't be dual qualified anymore. You're either going to be a counsellor or a psychotherapist. So
Okay.
they're changing the rules in a small bit.
Yeah.
But go back even further, and when you originally trained as a hypnotherapist, you were also dual qualified as a psychotherapist because the principles of counseling, psychotherapy, and hypnotherapy are all the same.
Mm.
And people don't realize that, it's we have the same forefathers, like, and we use the same principles and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, if I was to put a big sign outside my door and say hypnotherapist, I think people would think this lad is a witch doctor or something,
I know.
But saying that, in England, complementary therapy is highly recommended, and you won't get prescriptions off doctors until you go and see a complementary therapist, which would be a hypnotherapist, and he will make his report, or she'll make the report and send it back to the GP. It's just that in Ireland, we're just a little bit behind. But, people, the work you do yourself, like that's phenomenal work. Like the people that do Reiki, reflexology, kinesiology, I can't go through them all, but
Yeah.
they're all complementary therapies and they're excellent.
Yeah. And that's where I like that. I prefer the term complementary to
Yeah.
alternative, because
Mhm.
really health is, if we take a holistic approach, I think everybody
Yeah.
gets better outcomes. Medicine is
Of course.
amazing,
Mhm.
absolutely amazing, but
Mhm.
absolutely, if we can encourage better lifestyles, that will reduce the risk of, a lot of the chronic diseases that people are suffering from, and
Mhm.
a lot of even therapies like, say, reflexology and
Yeah.
acupuncture, and all of these can help things like our lymphatic drainage and all of these things that help
Mhm.
our immune system, so yeah, you're absolutely right. I think
Yeah.
it's got to be a mix of everything, but obviously medicine is amazing,
No, yeah.
Um, do you find now, compared to say 20 years ago, do you find that people are more open to talking about going for counselling or psychotherapy or hypnotherapy?
Um, they someone would quicker tell you that they went for hypnotherapy rather than psychotherapy. I still think
Right. Yeah.
there's still a bit of stigma attached to it, right? But
Yeah.
when I was training all them years ago, I was probably one of the youngest people in Ireland at the time training. I was in my 20s. It's generally counselling, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy. They were really second careers for people back then, where people might have been later in life in their 40s or their 60s, and this was career mark two,
Yeah.
So it was an older cohort of people. And I think sometimes younger people were a bit nervous or a bit anxious to go in and tell the stranger their problems because they might have reflected the same age as their own parents. And you
Yeah.
know what Ireland was like 20 years ago, it wasn't very open and honest. I remember when I had my own issues, my mother, God bless her, rang me and says, "Do not tell your father." And I was like, "Well,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to tell him anyway,"
Yeah.
because he wasn't that kind of a man that would understand. But he was great in other ways, just not
Yeah.
great in that situation. But no, people, there's more talk about it. People are more open about it, but we're just not there yet
Yeah,
with it.
it's great that there are all these campaigns.
Mhm.
It's okay to not be okay,
Yes,
and all of these social media
of
campaigns,
course.
they certainly help. But I
Yeah,
think particularly, it might. Do you think it's fair to say that it's harder for men
definitely.
to go for counselling or therapy of any sort?
No, it is harder for men. I think
Yeah,
90% of our clientele would be females, but
yeah,
over the last year or so, it's changing. Unfortunately, a lot of the men that I might deal with on a daily basis would be men that might be going through a separation, a
yeah.
divorce, marriage breakdown, something like that. They've waited until something has happened before they come. But then when they come, then
Mhm.
they're open, they're honest. They're trying to work it out. But no, men
Yeah,
definitely. I did an article, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was about a fella from, I think he's Monaghan. He's a farmer, I think. And he basically turned around and said to me, "I would have preferred," he says, "to talk to the cows in the shed than to go down the pub and tell people how I really felt or tell his own family." And, he didn't, he's of a certain age
mm.
and he didn't feel he didn't feel comfortable talking to people about his problems because it wasn't the done thing in his day, that kind of way. So,
Yeah,
but the problem with that is, though, like we don't really know this because the statistics in Ireland are quite poor, but older single men sometimes are at a high level of committing suicide because they're at this age where they don't want to talk to, they're not comfortable, they don't want to go to the doctor, they don't want to go and see the likes of me. So they're bottling up all their feelings and emotions and they don't know what to do with it. And then something happens, like
oh,
something
yeah,
triggers something, and that happens. So we, for a while there, we were targeting certain age groups. Like it's two ends of the spectrum. It's either the older person, unfortunately, or the younger person.
mm.
And they're the two groups that you're not going to get in here because the young people, they just don't want to talk about it. The older people don't want to talk about it, but it's the in-betweeners. So it's the ones
Yeah,
from maybe the 20 group up to the 40 group, possibly 25 maybe to 40, you have more chance getting them in here. But we're
yeah.
seeing now, though, unfortunately, with schools and stuff, there's a lot of bullying and stuff going on in schools.
Mm.
Social media has the world destroyed
Oh
because
my God, I know.
there is no hiding, if you know what I mean. And I'll explain that to you better, okay? I
Mm.
was bullied every day for 6 years in secondary school, okay?
Oh my
But I
gosh.
was lucky. Oh, I was a fine, big, strapping man. Don't worry about me, right? 6 years of torture until I stood up for myself one day, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But I got a bus to school. We got a bus to and from school every day. So when 4 o'clock came, the bullying stopped because I got home and we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have social media, and I didn't have to worry about it until 9 o'clock the next day, right?
Yeah.
So that was okay for me. That I knew that the end was coming. But unfortunately for people now, with Snapchat, Twitter, all these social media things that are really good for certain things and bad for other
Mm.
things, there's no turning off anymore.
Mm.
There's nowhere to hide for these people, that kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's tough, it's tough for them.
It's very hard. It's just,
Mm.
I think it can feel relentless for them. And
Yes.
um, as you say, they've nowhere to hide and no
No sanctuary.
space, no
You've got no
sanctuary.
sanctuary,
Yeah, yeah. And even, for the bullies themselves, I think that somehow social media dehumanizes the whole experience and they forget that there's like a person at the end of it, at the end of the trolling and the bullying,
Yeah,
who's
definitely,
who,
definitely.
it's awful.
I remember I used to do a bit of work for the probation service. So I was dealing with people that might have come out of prison directly or people that were sent there instead of going to prison. And you would be told a bit of background of their story, of how they ended up there. You're given a brief description of why they're there to start off with. But when you break it all down, they're only humans, okay? They're only
Mm,
normal people like you or me. And they might have got some bad advice, or someone might have egged them on or told them to do something. And I can relate to that because when I was younger, a young lad, I gave my car to a fella who went off, took my car, basically robbed a hotel with it, and I got in trouble. I had 3 guards at my house. But you see, those two lads, they just went down a rabbit hole. They got in with the wrong gang, and then one thing led to the other thing, and the other thing led to the other thing. But like at the end of the day, they're just two normal people who took a wrong turn. And I think
yeah.
sometimes with bullies, it starts off as a joke or, we're just doing it for the crack, but
Mm,
they don't see the damage that they're doing. But I think that they get so invested in it themselves,
mm,
they can't pull back then. That kind of way.
yeah.
It's sad, really, because I've often said about bullies, like anyone that I know that ever bullied me, they had their own problems, let me tell you. And they
Yeah.
mightn't have had them there and then, but if I look back now at where they went, what they're doing, where they're residing at the moment,
Mm,
probably I'm thinking, okay, they had their own problems back then. Sometimes it's just it's a front, it's a face for something else.
mm.
It's just they have to have something wrong with them because they don't think you get up in the morning intentionally wanting to make someone's life miserable. Maybe some people do, but
I think this the very,
mm,
very few people are really
yeah,
bad.
hmm
They're just, as you say, misled. And a lot
yeah,
of these young people, we know that that judgment part of the brain isn't fully
of
developed till we're in
course,
our late 30s or
yeah,
late 20s as well,
of course.
But this then having access to the social media and the phones just lets them go
Mm.
unchecked, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I always
Mm,
say to parents, like if your children are using phones, if they're under a certain age, like check what they're doing on it. Like it's very
mm,
important to know what your children are doing because what we hear, what I deal with in the therapy rooms at the moment, and what I'm hearing is I would recommend for all the parents to check what their kids are doing on phones because it's just not what you think they're doing, that kind of
I
way.
know.
And it's not, I wouldn't necessarily be worried about my son or daughter, but I'd be worried about the other person that's on them, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there with hidden agendas, and unfortunately in Ireland we don't use age verification on our socials. We do, but we can manipulate it.
Mm,
But I was dealing with a young girl, 13 years of age, and she was talking to some man in his 40s. Now, she didn't know
yeah.
he's in his 40s, but we know he's in his 40s because when we had escalated the case to the Gardaí and all that kind of stuff, they took over, they dealt with it, and they came back and told me what the situation was. But like, it's just that, just to be mindful. Like, people always say to me, can my kids go on the internet? 100%. Buy that big block of a computer, put it in the
Mm.
sitting room where everyone can see what everyone is doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know people say to me, I'm crazy, I'm mad. I'm not. I'm dealing with real life issues here on a daily basis.
Mm,
And I know what happens on these devices. And it's just that when kids go to the bedrooms and they have free access to whatever, There's no control, basically. I think when I think back to when I was a child, if phones were a thing back then, I am 90% sure my mother would check it every night to see what I was doing or what
Mm.
I wasn't doing on it.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about we used to have the phone in the hallway in the house, I'm
Yeah,
sure everybody be listening to,
of course. Yeah. But you see,
um,
we were just a bit more open back then where we didn't
yeah,
mind. I think we're probably a bit more innocent because we weren't exposed to the stuff on social media. Like, I mean, there's just so much badness on it, really. Look, it's
yeah,
good. We use social media for promoting a business, like letting people know there's help available. But
yeah,
some people just, there's any amount of nonsense on it. And
yeah.
I say to people all the time, give yourself a detox. Every now and again, switch off from social media. I'll give you a quick story, right? I had a young Cavan County footballer in here years ago, the most finest looking man I've ever seen, confident, great footballer, everything. Instagram had his life destroyed because everyone on it was posting up these fake pictures, I call them. They were just
Mm,
nonsense. And he was dreaming about, like, he thought he had to have this and that and everything.
mm,
But he didn't, because he was a very nice, talented, wholesome person. But he was been misled by social media, thinking that I have to be a certain way. So he came here to me in his deepest, darkest hour, and I got him off. I got him off social media for 2 weeks, and he was completely changed. Came in here reformed. I don't think he ever went back on social media after that
yeah.
because he's seen the difference between being on it and being off it. It's just that it can be very toxic for people, unfortunately.
Very toxic, and
Mm.
people start comparing themselves, and as you say, it's
Yeah.
not real anyway.
No.
They're
No.
filtered images and
Yeah,
images
and
of the best parts of someone's day, and that might not be representative of their whole day.
yeah, and
Mm.
like also, I was at a conference there a couple of weeks ago. As part of being therapists, we have to go to so many conferences every year, and it's turned out now that a lot of these young women or young men that have eating disorders and stuff, like, a lot of it is stemming from this nonsense on
Yeah,
social media where they're trying to portray this perfect body image. Like, it's it's sad because once something goes onto your feed, it stays there for a long period of time. And young people of a certain age, they think this is the way it has to be. And they're looking at someone on a platform and they're a certain weight and they look a certain way and they crave and they want to be like them. But I always say to people, like, we don't know what this model had to go through to look like that. What I'm saying is they probably have a dietitian, they probably have a personal trainer. They're probably fake pictures. We don't know. But
yeah.
we've started to see the correlation between eating disorders in Ireland and social media, where it's directly linked, basically.
Mm.
So it's where people are thinking, "Oh, this is the real world. We have to be like this." And I always say to people, if you've seen it on social media, don't believe it for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
It's
it's
we
nonsense.
we need to look around, as you say, engage when it
Yeah.
can be very useful. It can be a very happy place.
Mhm.
There can
Of
be lots of
course.
positivity up there, but it's the rabbit holes that we go
It's
down. If it
rabbit
starts
holes,
to
yeah.
make us feel
Mhm.
negative about ourselves, then it would be important to come off it for a wee while and
Well,
detox for sure.
I can give you an example about that, right? A small little example. I was there watching the game yesterday, Galway versus Armagh, right? So I was on that thing, Instagram, last night. And if I didn't feel bad after the match, I felt 50 million times worse last night. And that was just the power of social media. Now, there was nothing bad in social media last night.
Mm.
Armagh deserved the win. They were slightly better on the day, but every feed online was Armagh, Armagh, that kind of way. And it's
Yeah,
very easy. Like, I tell you what I did with that. I switched off the phone and I went to bed. It was very simple. That's how I dealt with it.
yeah, yeah,
But if you're at home and you're vulnerable and you're like a diehard fan, you couldn't get a ticket and all you see in this stuff, this would lower your mood. I did a podcast saying actually depression, and I was trying to say to people like that, something like that yesterday could trigger depression for someone very quickly. Now, look, I'll be fine in a few days. I'll get over it. We'll come back next year or whatever. But it's just one of those things where
yeah.
it can happen very easy,
Of
and
course, of
that's
course.
what I was trying to say to people, that if you can be pulled one way or the other. So just sometimes for people that a bit of a detox, like I should have just gone to bed last night and not go on the phone, but we're, what's that word? I'm not nosy, we're something else. We're just We love scrolling, don't we? Everyone
But
loves
it's
a bit of scrolling.
actually it's designed that way to be addictive.
Yeah,
It's
it
that
is.
fear, that FOMO
Mm.
or something where you sort of think, oh, the
Oh yeah,
next thing might be
yeah,
interesting. And
yeah.
that's what I don't know if you've come across Jonathan Haidt has written a book called The
Mm.
Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
So he has been studying this for several years, and I mean, he's primarily talking about how mobile phones are rewiring our teenagers' brains, and how there's obviously more anxiety among teenagers than ever before. But he just say it's not the phone itself, like say iPhones were made so that we could have our music on our phone, but it's the apps that are
Okay.
addictive, see, and especially obviously the social media apps and the particularly like TikTok and that kind of thing, and they are actually addictive, so we do,
Yeah.
even as adults, we have to manage ourselves like you did last night. You put the phone down, you knew it wasn't doing you any good, so you put it down, but we do have to really manage our
Yeah.
time on
Well,
phones.
what I was thinking was there's a podcast in the summer. That's what I did this morning. I recorded a podcast on it. But it was just those things where it's a bit like someone that'll have their cigarette or that have a drug for the first time. Like it's all to do with addiction, right? Where you have your first drug or your first cigarette, you get this natural high from it, okay? And what happens to people is it's like people that have gambling addiction, drink addiction. It's all to do with addiction, where we think by having that drug or that drink or that thing again, it's going to recreate it, but it doesn't. And that's where people
Mm,
kind of it turns into addiction then, where they're always seeking that next high, but it never comes because you'll only experience it the first time. It's like someone
mm,
that'll drink alcohol for the first time. They could get very drunk the first time because they've never had it, but the second time they have it, they're getting immune to it. They're getting their body gets used to it basically, and it's
mm,
not as effective, thankfully. So
mm.
phones are the same. I think like once we go on it and we see something really interesting on it, we keep going back again and
Yeah.
again and again, and then
We're,
before you know it, we're on it
we're,
for 5 hours.
and we're chasing the dopamine, isn't it?
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Excuse
Sorry.
me. Yeah, the
Dopamine.
dopamine, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Brendan, do you think that there is any more that we can be doing to encourage people to take care, of their mental health, before it gets to crisis stage? I mean, the campaigns are great.
Mhm.
Do you think that there's
Yeah.
anything else that we can be doing, or just keep talking about it,
We,
keep
we, we, we can
spreading the
keep
word about it? Yeah.
we can keep talking about it and spreading the word.
Mm,
Like, it's just where I say to people, sometimes people come to me and they say, okay, I'm not feeling well, whatever. And I always tell people, start off with the basics. Well, first thing is cut back on social media, okay? Because
mm,
that's the most toxic thing going. It has its good purpose and its bad purpose. Then I say to people, look, we're in the summertime now, not much of a summer, but we're in summer. Throw on a pair of runners, go for a walk. Even like, walk the
mm,
dog, do something. It's just about really changing the environment, doing something different, and you'll feel different. Like I did a Camino walk there a couple of months ago now, 35.5, whatever, kilometers, and I was dreading doing it, but I did it
mm.
and I actually enjoyed it. And I just say to people, like, it's just getting out, doing something different, like,
Awakening your five senses,
yeah,
that
basically,
you're in
just
the present moment,
yeah.
so
Mm.
if someone wasn't sure, what was going to help them, I mean, do you do some sort of a triage, say, where you chat to them to see, is it the counseling, is it the psychotherapy, is it the hypnotherapy?
Yeah, so anyone that should contact me, I would bring them in. I'd either do it I'd either do Zoom with them or I do it in person with them, right?
Yeah.
They come in, we just have a very, very informal chat. It's how are you? And then through my little informal chat, I'm gathering a bit of information. And then I decide then kind of, okay, what they're able to do and what might work and what mightn't work. And
Mm.
sometimes people that have come here, they might be past my help. So they might have to go to someone higher, which would be like a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or something like that.
Yeah.
But we would generally have that first open and honest conversation with them, see what's going on. And sometimes people they're happy to come back then, because they've met the therapist. They know what to expect. Like I'm no different from when you see me online to when you see me in person.
Yeah.
I don't go around in three-piece suit. I'm a very casual dresser. Make people very comfortable. We're just
I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning
yeah,
about the rapport that you felt with the
yeah,
first
exactly. Yeah.
therapist that you met, that rapport is really important, and finding the right therapist for you is really important.
Yeah, and that's what I say to people, anyone that's trying to seek out therapy for the first time, ring as many as possible and meet as many as possible. And
Mm.
any therapist will meet you, like, they will sit down, they'll have a conversation with you, and you'll know from when you meet the person whether you can work with them or not, because you have to think of it as a two-way system where can I work with you as a client or can I work with you as a therapist? Because
Yeah.
the rapport is vital, because that first therapist I went to, he was excellent. He just had a lovely way about him, and he made me really at ease and very comfortable very quick. And I knew I could work with him. Now, I might have had a few different therapists over the years after that at different stages of my life, and maybe the rapport wasn't as good with them, but I found one then after that that was just as good. And it's all about finding what works for you as a person, because if you don't have the rapport with the person, if you can't build rapport with the therapist, you're not going to sit there and be comfortable, and you're not going to open up, and you're not going to be honest, and it's not a very good process then for you, because you get disillusioned with it and you say, oh, therapy doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it's about finding the person that works for you. And I say to people all the time, just do your research. There's a lot of therapists out there. A lot of them deal with. There's actually so many different types of therapy out there. Start off with the approach I use is the holistic approach, where we don't go straight in asking the big direct questions.
Mm.
We build up to that over a period of time. It's holistic, but I work in the future. Okay, so how I work is I don't go back over the old stuff over and over and over. And I'll tell you why, because we've learned over the years that can have a negative effect
Yeah.
on the client. If you've had traumatic experience in your life, you don't want me to ask you the same question over and over. So I don't ask the same question.
Is there
But
something about where you're just deepening the neural pathways?
yeah, you are, by
Mm.
repeating the same thing over and over.
Mm.
Yeah, you're just kind of you're making them relive it every day again when
Okay.
you don't have to. But what I do with people is I might ask you a question on week 1, and I'm going to ask you the same question on week 6.
Okay.
And it's always a different answer, because the mind changes, and that's what we want. We want to see the shift in the mind, and it's a good process for people. But just for people to be aware, there's so many different types of therapies out there. So
Mm.
just find the one that suits you as a
Yeah.
person, because it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Um, so you mentioned about the hypnotherapy can be,
Mhm.
in some situations it can actually achieve the goal quicker. Do you
Uh,
find that people are a bit wary of hypnotherapy?
Yeah, they have been over the years, because of the nonsense that we see on TV, where people are on stages acting like dogs or
Yeah.
goats or sheep or lambs, right?
The
Now,
lack of control.
lack of
Yeah.
control, right?
Yeah.
What people have to understand is, okay, as good as I am, or as good as Keith Barry is, or any of these hypnotherapists, or like, I cannot make you do something you don't want to do, okay? With your mind is everyone's mind is a great tool. Okay, we have this protection mechanism built into it, where you're in like it's like a daydream trance. So you're sitting there, your eyes are closed, you can listen to everything I say. I'm giving you just some clear suggestions, or whatever you want to change. We start that process. But people know that they can get up anytime they want, they can leave anytime, they don't have to stay there if they're not comfortable. But the stage stuff is very different, because people are primed for a long, long time, where they're they're picked out of the audience earlier in the day, and there's a lot of work done on them. And then the therapist will say, the hypnotist will say to them, if I touch your shoulder, you'll fall asleep. If I move your leg, it's all stage. But
Yeah.
they're doing something that they want to do. That's the
Yes. And
that's the crux of it, that
that's
kind of
right.
thing.
They had volunteered in the first place
They
and
have, yeah.
they'd done the preparation.
Yeah, and
Mm.
once they've decided that they want to do that,
Mm.
I just think for some people it's just an excuse for them to lose that bit of control, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But hypnotherapy is way different to that. It's a very safe process, where people come to achieve something in a short space of time. And I'm not going to lie to you, in all honesty, people have come here for maybe quit smoking or something, and then they've come back then for more serious things. It's like we'll test the
Yeah.
water first. But
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, but again, it's down to the same thing, right? It's down to the therapist. If you get a therapist that's not good at his job, you're not going to come back because it's a process.
Mm.
And we find with people, they'll start off something small, like maybe a fear of flying, a phobia, something like that. Next, they'll contact you and say, I'm going to come back to something more serious. And that's no problem. And the beauty of that is that they've they've done it before and they understand the process. And it's not a complicated process. It's very simple and straightforward, but we do it in a good way. And
Mm.
people trust it. I've never, ever, ever had to advertise hypnotherapy in my life. Any customers I've ever got is through word of mouth. And there was a lad that came here one time to quit smoking. He's getting married. So he stood up on the day of his wedding and told 400 people that he came here to quit smoking. And for months after that, the phone was ringing every day.
No way.
Yeah, it was a great bit of advertisement, but
Yeah.
it's good. Like
Word of mouth.
it's
Yeah.
good word of mouth, and it's a good one. No, people are skeptical of it, but when people come and actually do it, they really enjoy it. I had a fella in here one time, and he was like, "Oh, this doesn't." A bit like myself when I first did it. This doesn't work. The next thing, yeah, he's seen the results a few days later, and he's like, "Okay, I'm sorry, that did work." So
Yeah. It
it's
probably
good.
felt too easy.
Yeah, well, to some people it does, but it's
Yeah.
very, look, we're not too bad with it here. There is other companies that do hypnotherapy and they charge a lot of money for it
Mm.
and they've no follow up. So what I do here is that I reinforce it, okay? So you come for quit smoking, you come back 14 days later, I do it all again for free. And that's my guarantee to you that I'm competent to what I'm doing and I'm confident that it works. But why I reinforce it is because when I did my first ever hypnotherapy session, it wasn't reinforced. And I felt it should have been because anything can wear off over five to 10 years. It's like anything you do at all in life.
Yeah.
So I reinforce it for people. And to be honest, nobody's ever come back and said to me that hasn't worked. People have come back and said, that's great. I do meet people sometimes and ask them, and they're like, no, we're still off the cigarettes, we're still off the drink, we're still off the other stuff. It's good. Like
Yeah.
it's a good process.
Great.
Mm.
Um, are there, so I wonder, Brendan, I know that you have a podcast yourself.
Mhm.
Can you tell the listeners where they can find you if they want to listen in?
So I started off doing a podcast with Cavan Online Radio. I was a contributor on a show actually, and then
Mm.
they said to me one day, "Okay, we do your own show." So then I started doing my own show, which was Mental Health Matters, and that's available on the Cavan Online Radio website,
Oh, great.
and that goes out every Monday. So we did one. We've had a few guests on it over the last year or so. Not as much. We haven't done as much now over the summer because people are on holidays, different schedules and stuff. But we generally do it. It's out every Monday. Um, all we're doing on it really is discussing things. We'll say that's happening. We'll say so. This week we did depression based on Galway losing yesterday. Next week we're doing something with gambling addiction. The week after we're doing alcohol addiction. And I'll tell you why we're going with gambling and alcohol addiction. The gambling one came from the Euros were just on there recently, and all I seen everywhere was how to place bets and how to do that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very attractive market, but it's very dangerous. I don't have the figures here. I think I had them here. Gambling addiction in Ireland is very high. I think at the moment there's 130,000 people with a gambling addiction in Ireland. Okay. And then the other one, the alcohol one, is coming on the back of. I was in a shop the last day. Now, guys, I'm only human, so I was buying wine. The machine stopped, and the shop assistant came down to me and said, if you get two more bottles of wine, you get 25% off. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. But people have to understand that we have a massive drink problem in Ireland, and I drink myself, so I'm fully aware of it. But if, say, someone that's an alcoholic, like they don't need those extra two bottles of wine. Like I was just amazed how this machine stopped. Someone had to come down and tell me that I could go down to the counter, get two more bottles, and I get 25% off. And I was like, I only wanted what I had in front of
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
But it was again the problem that we're having with accessibility in Ireland to gambling, to drinking. And look, they're both addictions and they're very serious ones. So we'll be covering them over the next 2 weeks just to raise a bit of awareness. We find that summertime is a funny time because a lot of services go on holidays and stuff. And unfortunately, addiction never really stops. If you have a gambling addiction or an alcohol addiction or anything like that, it doesn't stop, unfortunately. That
Yeah.
kind of way. So we find that in the summertime we like to ramp up the stuff, and it's not for. We don't advertise. We don't sell anything on it. We're actually promoting all local services around Cavan. So Pieta House, So Sad, all them organisations, because we're just trying to give something back to the community because it's a community radio, and I thought it was a good platform to put the information on it. So it's just something we do,
Brilliant.
a bit like what you do here yourself,
Yeah. Well,
doing up your podcast and stuff.
I'll put up the links in the show notes as well anyway,
Perfect.
to
Thank you very
your
much.
website and also to the show. So that's brilliant. Breandan, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I literally could listen to you all day. You have so many stories and it's so informative and definitely clarified, the differences between the different types of therapy and I think demystifying something, can
Yeah.
certainly help people and encourage people if they feel they need to go and talk. There's absolutely it's like looking after your physical health,
Yes.
and of course they're all connected. Our mental and our physical health is really connected because if we don't look after our mental health, it often then manifests in some sort of physical, disease as well,
Of course. Well, it's the mind body connect. It's
Yeah.
where it's a two-way system. One regulates the other, and you have to mind them. I had a fellow here one day, and he has a gut problem. Okay, and I knew that he was out of form himself, and I heard that 20 years ago, and I wasn't sure about it, but it's a real thing. Like if something isn't if your head isn't right or your body isn't right, it's going to throw the whole body offline. That kind of way, and it's a serious thing for a lot of people because they they don't understand the connection. But I just say they have to co-regulate each other. Just think of it as a two-way system. The two of them have to work the same way
Yeah.
to get the best functioning out of it. But before I go, can I give you a name of two books or two people would
Yes,
say
that'd
that
be
if people
great.
are looking? Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a psychotherapist out there. His name is Dr. Coleman Doctor. Okay, and he has a book out called The 4 to 7 Zone. Okay, and the book is basically a book that anyone can read. Okay, like any lay person can read it. It's not designed for therapists, but it's just designed for people that want to understand their own mind a bit better. That's an excellent book. I read it, and then Dr. David Coleman. I think people might know him
Oh, yes.
from RT, right?
Yes.
He does everything with child psychology. So people always say to me, I'm having this problem with my son or with my daughter. He is the man to look up. I don't know, has he got any books out, but
He does actually.
does he? Yeah.
I'll pull up a link to
Do.
both of those,
Yeah.
and to I think David Coleman has a couple of books out,
Does
so
he? Okay,
I'll put up the links to those as well. That's great. Thank you very much,
no
Brenton. That's
problem at all.
great.
Well,
Lovely
he's
resources.
excellent. He's excellent when it comes to child psychology. I mean, people always say to me, not every therapist would deal with children because a lot of them, if they're under 18, they have to be supervised. Sometimes the parents don't want to have to come and wait. That's fine. But Dr. David Coleman is your man for that. And if somebody
Yeah.
wants to understand themselves better, Dr. Coleman, Dr. The 4 to 7 Zones, they're just excellent resources for anyone that wants to understand themselves a bit better.
Super. I'll order them myself. Well,
Perfect.
thank you, Brendan. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
My thanks again to Breandan for covering such a wide range of topics and also for sharing his stories. And I'll pop some information about how you can follow him or contact him into the show notes. Now, the store cover staple for this episode is a fruit which contains vitamin C, and vitamin C is great for our adrenal glands. And these glands can become exhausted if we're living, in a state of chronic stress. And the fruit is the good old reliable orange. So oranges are among our most popular fruit across the globe. They're citrus fruits, and the sweeter types are, of course, the most popular. And these include Valencia, Navel, and Jaffa oranges, along with the smaller varieties like Satsuma, Tangerine, and Mandarins, and they contain similar benefits. The more bitter orange varieties would often be used making marmalade and liqueurs like Grand Marnier or Cointreau. So as early back as 500 BC, oranges appeared in a literary text from China called the Five Classics. Then in the 9th century, people started to cultivate them in the Middle East. The sweeter varieties were introduced into Europe by traders and travellers coming back from the Middle East and Asia in the 15th century. And then in the 16th century, Spanish explorers brought them to the USA. By the 18th century, they had been brought from the East Coast over to the West Coast, namely California, for cultivation. They're now among the leading fruit crops in the USA, and other large producers are Mexico, Brazil, Spain, Israel, and China. In terms of their nutritional highlights, oranges are an excellent source of these compounds, which are powerhouses called flavonoids. And flavonoids are found in plants and they give them their vibrant colours. Now oranges also contain vitamin C, and they're a good source of fibre, which is obviously great for our gut and for our good gut bacteria. They contain B vitamins, B1, B2, B5, B6 and B9, which is our folic acid, and also carotenes, which give them their orange colour, pectin and potassium. So all of these vitamins and minerals make oranges great for our immune system, the lenses in our eyes, our adrenal glands, as we mentioned, our reproductive organs, and also our connective tissue. So vitamin C is needed to produce collagen, and our connective tissue really needs collagen, as does our skin. One of the most important flavonoids in oranges is one called hesperidin. And this has been shown in animal studies to lower blood pressure and cholesterol and be anti-inflammatory. So it's mostly concentrated in the white pulp, on the inside of the orange. So that's why it's much better to eat an orange as opposed to drinking orange juice, which we know, a lot of the cartons of juice that you come across on the shelves can have a lot of added sugar. So, that makes them bad for our teeth and for our blood sugar balance and our gut as well. So eating an orange is much better than drinking processed juice. Now, when you buy them, what can you do with them? So obviously they're great for lunches, especially the smaller ones. They're very easy to peel, easy to carry, so they're a great addition to anybody's lunchbox. They can be added to salads. So you can put little segments into your salads and decorate your desserts with them. They're lovely as a starter with melon and can be used in main courses as well with chicken and of course in some cakes as well. So I'll put links to recipes in the show notes too. Hopefully there is enough information there to encourage you to pop some oranges into your shopping trolley this week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I just wanted to clarify that the podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional care from a doctor or trained health professional, nor constitute medical advice or services if you're in a position to need either. However, if you found it interesting, you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes, or sign up for my newsletter on lynsharkeynutrition.ie.